For step 3 in this example, we're going to place some adaptive components using the groups of points that we've been pulling together. And the placing of the adaptive components is actually pretty easy if you have the number of points right for feeding each of the different types of or placing each of the different types of adaptive components. So each of the adaptive components we're going to be using uses 2 points. We're going to basically use family types to load in some adaptive component families, okay, or to access some of the adaptive component families that are available in our Revit project. Okay, and then we're going to basically place adaptive component by points feeding the pairs of points and the family type. And again, the most important thing is that the input on points must be organized in the same way that the family expects. And the most common problem people tend to have is just, it's all in the hierarchy and the flattening of the list to make sure that the points are in the proper order to be placing the adaptive components. So that'll be the key thing to watch out for in your model. Now, once we go through and place the adaptive components, we can set their parameters. So we can do set into the instance parameters. In our case, I'm going to place a tube element, and then we're going to adjust the tube thickness, the tube radius. So let's take a look at that. So we have all of our nice looking curves and points over there. Let's go ahead and do the verticals first. So I'm going to basically take these points, these pairs of points, which are the vertical kind of elements. I'm going to basically bring in, oh, I don't want this V-corner mullion. That's not going to work. Instead, I'm going to go this tube 2-point with a constant radius. Now that's going to work. And let's just sort of run that, see what that looks like. Okay, you can sort of see we have all our little vertical tubes right now. Let me maybe zoom in on there. Now those vertical tubes are probably just a little bit chunky for what I have in mind. So what I'm going to do is basically take those components and just basically give it a thinner radius, like 0.5 or something like that. Make them a little bit skinnier. Super. Now we're ready to kind of place the adaptive components in the other directions. So I can start with just a list of curves, or the list of pairs of points, okay, which is going to be for the lower curve, the lower spiral curve. So again, I'll bring that up. Check to make sure we have the right family selected here. That looks good. I'll run that. We can decide whether that's the right size or not. Again, if I want to adjust that, I can. Let's give myself a nice parameter for doing that. And for the last one, we'll take this final set of points right here. And again, give it the right type of family. And we'll adjust the radius on that. Let's go ahead and run that. Super. So there you have it, a very flexible, adaptive kind of spiral there that we could use to model something that has an unusual shape that I wouldn't want to place manually. Okay, and again, as we think about this, you can see it's a little bit chunky right now relative to the geometry we're trying to create. If that's now feeling a little bit chunky, we can go through and increase the number of placement points. In fact, that's generally a good strategy. I always kind of talk about strategies for making things a little bit more efficient. It's not bad, again, to try things with small numbers of points. So 20 points was enough to go through and get ourselves started. But if I raise that number of points, I can get a finer model, but it'll take longer to compute. So now that I think that this looks relatively good, let me just raise the number of points. I'll run that. And when this gets done computing, that's a little bit smoother looking as a model. If I want to get even smoother still, I can raise that. But again, try to think about using strategies like this to go ahead and work out the logic and the programming and the math first before you get into like just doing mass numbers of points. It'll just make your life a whole lot easier as you're working with this. So that's looking pretty smooth right now. I could start thinking about maybe putting some wall surfaces in there, but that's a pretty nice little model of an expanding spiral.